they have forms of identification? Do they have ID cards or anything?
Some don't.
Yeah.
Most of them do. That we that come across.
At least if they're still in school,
Yeah.
they've got their school ID,
Yeah.
and that, you know, that helps. But no, I mean, you know, we get the, especially immigrants that are just coming over, and we're getting, and it's not stopping. The wave of immigration is still hitting our county pretty good. They don't often get set up right away, and we do sometimes get, we occasionally get the kid off the bus from Chicago or Minneapolis. They heard Rochester was a nice place to stop with their baby, so they just show up one day and, hi, I just got off the bus, I just spent every dollar I had to get here. Where do I go now? I'm 17 with a kid.
Right.
There's nothing we
Right.
can do. And it breaks your heart, and then sometimes those kids don't have the wherewithal, but I would say that's the exception rather than the rule.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a mailing address, you can't get photo ID. I don't think.
They could actually have a mailing address sent to, like for example, some of the kids I worked with at Von Wall Shelter, they can actually have their IDs saying go to Von Wall if they're homeless.
Good.
Okay.
How about kids under 18? Can you get a printed ID under 18 unless you're in the school?
You can get a Minnesota
Yeah.
ID card.
You can
Okay, can you,
Once
so
you're
you,
16.
once you're 16?
Yeah, but if you have a mailing address.
I still think they do something similar to what like the Von Wall.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, those would be some of the logistics and potentially a discounted bus
Right.
program. I mean,
But
because
I think-
that was a good question because,
The paper
Otherwise you
won't
would
probably
pass
do it
it.
when they want to get right.
right,
I
Pass
think
it from
that,
person to person.
yeah, I think that idea of the referral program though, that makes sense too. I mean, you have to be personally referred.
Do you think kids would have the discipline? I'm just wondering, even if we provided almost free bus service, are kids gonna have the discipline to show up in the, you know, at the routes, you know, at certain times to do that?
Oh, you mean if there's only a certain amount of times that they're,
Yeah.
I don't know, that's hard, because sometimes they meet with me when they know they get a bonus or something, you know, that's beneficial to them. But things happen, you know, and they'll, I don't know, it's hard to say. I think if it's during the peak times that they would be more likely to be using it, I think, you know,
Okay.
you figure it that way, but.
and maybe it would require a pilot to
Yeah.
justify, to see if it would go, and, you know, maybe a pilot would be to start off on some of the RCTC or Crossroads, because more than likely those would be used more than, I mean, because if they're paying to go to school, you would think that would be a little bit more used. We are coming close to our hour, and so I want to quickly summarize things that I've learned from you, because I want to make sure that I'm going to communicate this appropriately to the different transportation folks, mainly in the area of the gaps. The location, we ran through a whole series of the hot resources that you've identified, and I'll look to see where those geographically lay out and see if there is a cluster. As far as timeframes, before and after school, second shift, maybe even third shift, and then and it also is tied to the resources with that, because healthcare is likely anytime during the day. But when you're looking at more of the school time frame, you're looking in the morning and afternoon. The children aspect of things, as far as the transportation, being able to accommodate children in some of these. Let's see, I found it interesting, the discussion on the current modes, because the whole bike philosophy, I guess that would have been, so in fact that was a discussion piece for one of our CIPs, is our community impact project is to have a bike program. You know, and if bike isn't necessarily one of the main means, then would that have been used to the extent that it should have been? It's interesting to do that. And then really kind of looking at some of these potential solutions. There is a group from RCTC that has expressed interest in continuing on with some of the volunteer aspect of this community impact project. So what this discussion will do is feed that meeting. I think that meeting is next week, where they're going to have a kickoff to see how they can become engaged with continuing on with this. So that's kind of why I was pressing a little bit on some of those details about some of the potential solutions, because if we can kind of serve up a little bit more of a framework on the transportation topic, there could be some more teeth put into it with that. And knowing some of the collaborations that possibly have worked over in Madison, maybe we can go down that path, you know, between
Well, I think
United Way
that
and
church
City.
idea is great.
Yeah, I think the church
totally
idea is-
agree.
Yeah.
I totally
I think the
agree.
churches would be on board with that too, I would think.
That one even got an underline. I know.
It'd be good to also, the church groups that have maybe a youth group within the church group to talk to the youth pastors, that would, they can help, be a good channel to go through.
That's a good point. Is there anything that I missed that needs to be highlighted as these discussions move forward?
I don't know how much it would get used, but, you know, we need to, and if there hasn't been good daycare developed for these infants, so that moms can go to school, and go to work. In that case, if there are, then transportation to and from daycare to school or work sites, is gonna be huge, because that's the way some of these 17-year-old gals are gonna stay in high school, is if there is daycare, and then how do we get kids to daycare and back so they can go to high school?
Well, Golden Hill, I think, has that set up within their facility now. And
Right.
it sounds like they get used quite a bit.
Crisis nurseries are.
I don't know.
What's
That's it,
up?
and I'm really.
I asked what population crisis nursery
Oh.
serves.
And that may not be an issue,
You could
because I
ask
know some
Chuck.
high schools have nurseries, you know, right there in the high schools, so they'll take care of that in some of the high schools too.
I think
but-
Golden Hill might be the only one. I know
Oh, is that
Rock,
right?
Rock doesn't, and I don't think Studio Academy does.
So,
Certainly none of the public high schools
Right.
do.
and so again, I don't know, but if we could find some daycare, you know, and get kids to and from daycare, especially if the new transportation is available, there's funding available for it, and there might even be a daycare that, if we could work out the transportation, has the openings, and will take the government assistance to fill their spots in daycare.
That's a great point.